The final ride line, as well as the final encounter card for set 5, the triumphant return of the brave heroes, has been released or revealed. So it's time to do some research in these new cards. Stand up! Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we're gonna take a look at the final big reveals for set 5. As of the release of this video, the entire set list for set 5 is released, but we're not really gonna cover the last couple of commons. I believe there are a couple of that still have to be released or revealed after the Tuesday livestream reveal, but I digress. We're mainly gonna cover the big reveals, and that includes the new ride line for the Brandgate archetype, with the inclusion of the Brandgate Cater Sanctuary combo card, as well as the MLB encounter ride line cards. So without any further ado, let's jump straight into these reveals and see what these new cards bring to the table. And we're gonna start off with the Eva ride line for Brandgate, and that brings us to the starter, which is of course One Who Craves Knowledge Eva. And it's just a generic starter, so we can immediately skip forward to the Grade 1, which is an afternoon nap regardless of place Eva. And her ability is, although when the unit is placed by riding from One Who Craves Knowledge Eva, search your deck for up to one research card, reveal it and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. And she has the glitter keyword. So essentially she allows us to immediately grab a specific order card, and I can immediately tell you it's a set order because Brandgate works with set orders. In this case it's yet a new version of a set order. It's a research type, and the fact that we can search it out is very similar to, I believe, Orphis has a similar skill on the ride line, and it's nice because it just gives you the consistency of getting your engine live as soon as possible. And if we get multiple types of research cards, that allows us to grab the card that we need for a specific situation, like what's happening with Orphis with the various world order cards. Now you might be wondering, what are these research cards, or in this case, what is this research card? Well, that's this Grade 2 Experiment Successful, and it has the effect, although when this card is put into your order zone, draw a card, choose a card from your hand and discard it. If your order zone has 3 or more research cards, cost Soulless 1, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and bind it. So before we analyze the skill, keep in mind this is a Grade 2 set order. So that means if we write the Grade 1, we cannot actually use the order immediately that turn because we're still at Grade 1. So we have to wait a turn, which is kind of annoying, as seen as we need to build up multiple research cards to actually get the power of this card. And because we need to wait until turn 2, that means we need to wait a couple of turns, as we can only play one per turn. And this ride line doesn't cheat out order cards like we see with potentially other archetypes, so this is a relatively slow mechanic. And another downside is, because this is the only research card we currently have access to, that means you can only use the secondary effect of this card twice per game, because the first 2 set orders you place are essentially just a cycle effect. And that brings us to the actual value of this card. It is not a necessary cycle, and mainly a cycle with a minus, because we place this card from hand, which is a -1, and then we draw and discard. So we have a cycle on top of a minus, which isn't ideal. But if we can build up the amount of order cards, we can then Soulless 1 to bind one of our opponent's rear guards. But again, it's kind of underwhelming in the sense of value that we can generate, what this order provides, which has me a little bit disappointed for what this order could do. Now, moving on to the ride line, we have the Grade 2 of the ride line, which is Smooth Research Progress Eva. And this Eva has the effect, although when a unit is placed by riding from an afternoon nap regardless of place Eva, search your deck for up to one research card, reveal it and put it in your hand and shuffle your deck. And once again, the glitter keyword. So this is the exact same skill as the Grade 1. So unlike the other ride lines for Brandgate, this at the very least grabs you multiple set orders. So you're gonna filter your deck, which is nice, and then you can stack up the amount of set orders in your order zone as efficiently as possible. Because the Grade 1 gets you 1, this Grade 2 gets you 1, so you already have 2, so you only need to search in the third one to get the full effect of the Grade 2 set order. So honestly, it's not terrible. It's filtering, it's free filtering, and it's consistent filtering. And I think these card effects can only become stronger the moment we get multiple research cards. Now, moving on to the Grade 3, where this whole archetype is building towards, we have Fountain of Knowledge Eva. And this Eva has the effect, act on Vanguard Circle once a turn, cost counterblast 1, look at the cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of research cards in your order zone, choose up to one card from among them, put it into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. And this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So here we see the value of the actual research cards. So the research cards themselves aren't very powerful, but they play and build into this effect. So the more research cards we play, the stronger this effect is, because we can search more cards from top of our deck to grab a specific card into our hand. And keep in mind, the moment you activate this skill, you will always have 2 research cards in your order zone, because on turn 2 you can place 1, and on turn 3 you can place the second one you got from your right line. So at the very least, this effect will always be counted plus 1, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose one of among them, put it in your hand, and the rest of them, and the other one or the rest goes up to the bottom of the deck, and the Vanguard gets plus 5k power. Now it doesn't sound all too great, but it's actually draw power, but it's searchable draw power. So it's similar to what we saw with Cruising Dragon for the end of ZTB, once we saw this very powerful draw engine for Gear Chronicle. And this somewhat emulates this, and could essentially be better at the moment we have multiple research cards in our order zone. And with the already inherent filtering, you actually are going to go through your deck quite fast, and with the other cards you're stacking on beneath your deck, the moment we get more research cards, this effect could actually scale very fast, and then you could have some type of Tsukiyomi-like engine. But currently that's very far out of reach, because we basically going to check top 2 and top 3 essentially. Isn't really that quickly, but maybe in the future this could scale up to like check top 4, top 5 on a very consistent basis. But she also has another effect besides those raw draw power and filtering, which is auto and Vanguard Circle. When this unit attacks, cost counter plus 1 and soul plus 1, search your deck for up to 1 card with up to date in its card name and call to the Vanguard Circle. If you search your deck, shuffle your deck. So now we get multi-attack, but more importantly, we see multi-attack from the deck on our Vanguard boss unit, which is honestly very nice. So this means we have inherent 4 attacks, but at the same time we filter a deck for multi-attack. This is somewhat reminiscent of GR Altmal, where they multi-attack with grade 2s from the deck. This case, it's a grade 3. I can already tell you that the multi-clan support card for this rideline is a grade 3. And that's honestly not that bad. Counter plus 1, soul plus 1. So essentially you counter plus 1 for a plus 1 because you get a card to the field from your deck, and soul plus 1 to get another attack. I wouldn't complain for that value. The only issue that I have with this effect is that the moment you're out of copies of this card, this effect doesn't really do anything. So if you already exhausted your pool of this grade 3, then this becomes a dead skill. And sure, that doesn't happen all too often, because you can also call them from your hand, but that means you will get less value because you don't get the plus off of it. But if in some case you damage 2 of them and you already used 2 of them, then this card loses its value. Now, that doesn't mean the card skill is bad in all regards. It's still a very potent skill, but I feel like maybe somewhere down the line with future support, we might need a card that allows you to shuffle that card back into your deck or grab it from the drop zone into your hand or something. But I don't know how much it's needed, because keep in mind, you can play up to 4 copies. That means in most instances you can use the skill at the very least 2 times, maybe 3 times or 4 times, but do games last that long? That's also the question. So overall, I think it's honestly a very solid boss unit, and the interesting thing about this is that this card has future scalability, with the fact that the more research cards you have, the stronger this card can become. And same goes with the grade 1 and the grade 2 of the ride line, because if we have multiple search targets, their search effect also becomes more potent. So even though right now on first glance it's kind of a bit lackluster, this ride line, you do, with the fact that we only have 1 research card, and spoiler alert, we've seen the entire card list and it looks to be like we only get that 1 research card, but there is future potential if we get more support for this ride line, maybe next year once we see another set dedicated to the Cray lore units. But of course this isn't everything, because we also have of course the unit that we can superior call with Eva, which is of course discourage free Knight of Blackness up to date. I think that's how you pronounce it, otherwise rectify me in the comments down below, because I am horrendous with words or names. So his abilities are Auto Vanguard Circle. When this unit attacks, if your order zone has a set order, this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of battle. And if it has 3 or more set orders, this unit gets power plus 10k instead of plus 5k. So it's essentially an 18k or 23k attacker. Now this can synergize with any of the Brand Gate ride lines, which is nice because they all have set orders. And interesting enough, it can synergize with Cater Sanctuary, because Cater Sanctuary has a set order. But that means it's basically an 18k attacker in those decks, because you're very unlikely gonna play 3 set orders in Gate of the Sanctuary. So yeah. The interesting thing is that this basically tells us that we don't want to use this effect on the very first Eva turn, because on the very first Eva turn you only have 2 set orders, so it's only 18k, whereas if you wait a turn, it gets an additional 5k power. And if you could Persona Ride a turn, it's essentially 15k stronger than the turn before. So there might be some choices to make here if you want to use it on turn 3 or turn 4. It also comes down to how many copies you have left, but it all is up to your choice. Overall, that in itself is decent, but it also has another effect, which is Glitter Eva. Although when it's placed on the rearguard circle by a card's ability, aka Eva, if your order zone has 3 or more research cards, this unit gets critical +1 until the end of the turn. So if there was another reason why you should wait another turn, it's this. Now it becomes stronger and it hits with another critical. So your turn 4 is looking pretty spicy, especially if you could Persona Ride. But it only comes into play if you draw your 3rd set order, because if you cannot see your 3rd set order, this doesn't really do as much. And interesting enough, it has another glitter effect, because usually all the other glitter units only have 1 glitter effect. This has a second one, which is Continuous Rearguard Circle, Guardian Circle. This unit gets Intercept and Shield plus 10k. So now you have a 10k Interceptor on a grade 3. That's actually not bad, and the thing is, you're probably gonna call this on top of another unit when you multi-attack. You don't lose out on the potential shield value of that card, because now you have a 10k intercept. And in some cases, you actually generate more shield, because most units, grade 2 is only a 5k shield. So this is actually more shield while you're multi-attacking, while you're pressing with more powerful numbers and criticals. That's actually pretty decent. So of all the ride lines, this has 4 attacks, and I believe some of them have 5, some of them potentially 4. This feels like the most potent, powerful one of the 4 attacks. I think Tamura still has the more playability with 5 attacks, but the fact that it generates extra shield and criticals, and it can search out your cards from your deck while filtering as much, I think it has a lot of potential. I think the only downside to this ride line right now is that we only have 1 research target, and most of the generic brand kit cards are kind of underwhelming, except for a couple of cards, like Bulbamine is a very potent card with the resource, but I don't really feel like this engine used a lot of resource, because the only cost we see is on Eva with the counterblast cost. And I think, and I mean, a Bulbamine refunds the multi-attack immediately, so that could come up, but we have to wait and see how the actual end result of this deck is going to be. I think right now it's not right there, because we lack the amount of cards, but once we get more support and we see multiple research cards, I can see this engine, this ride line, suddenly become very strong and very potent. But we have just to wait and see for future releases. On the other side of the coin here, we also have the new MLB Royal Paladin ride line cards. So let's take a look at these new encounter cards for the Royal Paladin style of Gate of Sanctuary that could and probably would synergize with the Shadow Paladins. So first off, we have the brand new starter, which is Wingull Brave. It's just a generic starter, so we can immediately move on. If we move up to grade 1, we have Little Sage Marin, which has the skill, although when this unit is rode upon by a grade 2 with Blessed in its card name, that can be Blaster Blade, but that can also be Blaster Dark. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 2 with Blaster in its card name from among them, review it and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. If you did not review a card, choose a Wingull Brave from your soul and you may call to the rearguard circle. So interesting enough, this card will always provide you with a +1. Either you get a Wingull Brave on the rearguard circle so you can make a stronger Vanguard swing, or you get a Blaster Blade or Blaster Dark to your hand, which can set up your MLB turn, which is honestly pretty nice. Now it also has the effect, continues a rearguard circle during a turn. If you have 3 or more units, this unit gets power +2k. This skill will be very redundant because you're probably not going to play this card in your main deck for that skill, as there's no necessary name situation here for Marin, and that skill is kind of lackluster. So you're mainly going to play it in your ride line, and honestly it's pretty decent for your ride line because it gives you searchability, and it also at the very least gives you a +1 in every single situation of the game. Now for a quickly refresher for Blaster Blade, for anybody that forgot about this card, Blaster Blaster Blade has two effects, from which one is auto. When you use blades on the Vanguard circle, cost counter +1. Choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. If you did not retire, draw a card. So it's always going to be a +1. Either you pop a unit from your opponent's side of the field, or you draw a card. Similar to Blaster Dark, because Blaster Dark, counter +1, you retire one of your units to snipe one of your opponent's units, and you draw, and you get an extra drive check. So it's somewhat similar, but in the case of Blaster Dark, you have even more pressure with the drive check, but you need to sacrifice one of your own units, which could come into play with Little Sage Marin, because Marin can call out the Wingle Brave that you then can sack off. That's an interesting synergy you can think about. And of course, the second ability of Blaster Blade is auto. When the unit is placed in the rearguard circle, cost counter +1, choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater rearguard and retire it. So yet another skill to pop a unit. So both skills, counter +1 to pop a unit, or you could draw a card if it's on your Vanguard circle. So now that we have a quick refresher on Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark, let's take a look at Majesty Lord Blaster. So Majesty Lord Blaster has the effect, continues a Vanguard circle. If your soul has Blaster Blade and a Blaster Dark, this unit gets power +2k, critical +1, active on your opponent's turn 2. So it's similar to the MLB of the V series, where it has a higher base power even during your opponent's turn. So it's a 15k base double critical unit, which honestly is pretty decent because it helps you defending a lot. And with the lower shields value in Overdress, this extra 2k can actually matter. So this is honestly pretty sweet and can definitely help this deck to stall into the late game, or at least survive at least an extra turn, as it can save up quite a few cards in your hand. But this isn't the only thing about the card, because the card has another skill, which is auto Vanguard circle. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, perform all of the following. You can choose to perform only one. Cost: put a Blaster Blade from your rearguard circle into your soul, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. Cost: put a Blaster Dark from your rearguard into soul, and this unit gets drive +1 until the end of turn. So as we see with Blaster Blade, it has a skill that can use counter +1 to pop a unit. And then on top of that, we can then immediately put it into the soul when our Vanguard attacks to pop another rearguard unit. So Blaster Blade allows us to basically has a lot of control aspect. And Blaster Dark also has an unplaced effect that could retire one of your opponent's rearguard, albeit for the cost of one of your own, but you can still retire one of your opponent's rearguards. So in combination with this effect of MLB, you actually have a very pop-heavy type of playstyle that actually can control the board, which is not that familiar or that known with Royal Paladin, which is kind of interesting. But that is the case if you mix Royal Paladin with Shadow Paladin as much as this deck does. But if we look at the Blaster Dark version, you become a triple drive Vanguard with the extra critical, with the higher base power. And if we can Persona Ride, don't forget Persona Ride is also a thing, you could actually have some sizable numbers with quite a decent threat. And you're not forced to put them both into your soul, so you can keep potentially one on the board if you feel comfortable with it. And you can still have a different unit on the sideline, so if your opponent perfect guards your Vanguard, you can stack all the potential triple drive units or triggers onto the other attack, so you can still pressure with that as well. Now, the interesting thing here is, because the right deck is a thing, you might want to consider if you either want to go for Blaster Blade or Blaster Dark as your grade 2. Because keep in mind, the one that's in your right deck has less chance to actually get it onto your rearguard circle, as you have one less copy in your deck. Which also means that there's less chance you will find it with Wingle. So by prioritizing either the pop or the extra drive check, that can then determine if you want to go for Blaster Dark on your grade 2 turn or Blaster Blade on your grade 2 turn. But keep in mind, Blaster Dark, even though the triple drive is nice on turn 3, you could still get the twin drive on turn 2 for the early pressure, and with the effect from Marin that allows you to pop out the Wingle Brave and then sack it off with Blaster Dark, that being a very nice early game synergy, could maybe opt you to still choose to have Blaster Dark as your grade 2, while Marin is your grade 1 and MLB is your grade 3. It all comes down to your preference and what specific playstyle you want to take, as there are multiple options similar to what we saw with the Tech Raya rideline. And honestly, these type of design patterns where there's actually options and there's a reason to play a different card in your rideline on grade 1, 2, or 3, that's what I really like to see, and that's what I want to see more with the future rideline potential and potential upgrades to previous ridelines that we have so far. Now, of course, that isn't everything for MLB, because we have one more card that we need to go over, which is a brand new grade 3 normal order, which is Bravery to Stand Against, Will to Pierce Through. And this normal order has the effect, play this with cost counter +1, if you have a Vanguard with Blaster in its card name, search your deck for up to one grade 2 unit with Blaster in its card name, reveal it, and put it in your hand and shuffle your deck. So this is basically more consistency for the engine, and this is a necessary card to make the deck work, because you need your Blister Blaze and Blaster Dark, and essentially this becomes 4 extra copies of the grade 2s, and it can substitute for either. So if you see this in your opening hand, you have a full power MLB, because you have either Blaster Blade or Blaster Dark in your right line, and this order substitutes as the other Blaster unit, because now you have both grade 2s, access to them, and you can put them both into your soul, thus having a full power MLB. And this basically gives the consistency to the deck that it needs to make the deck operate on the level it's supposed to operate. And further that, there isn't really anything to discuss. Like, it's a filter, which is nice. It isn't a minus, because you counter +1 and trade this card off for another card, which honestly, I think it's decent enough, especially with the fact that MLB doesn't cost any resources. Yes, you suck up units, but you get the value back. Either you suck a unit up and you pop in another of your opponent's units, so it's a 1-for-1 trade, or you suck up a unit and you get an extra drive check, which is a cycle as a drive check, which is honestly not that bad. So honestly, I think they look pretty decent. I think MLB is... I don't think it's ridiculously powerful. I think it's a solid, balanced version of what the card is supposed to be. Like, the V version was kind of ridiculous on release. I feel like this is going to be a bit less impactful, but still probably solid enough. And I think Eva has a lot of future potential, but I think she needs to go back to the lab to do a little bit more research before she can actually make a name for herself in the wide world of Cray. But with that said, that's everything that I wanted to talk about today. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below about all these cards. What do you think of the new Eva rideline? What do you think about MLB and the new playstyle, or should you say the revamp of its old playstyle? And what do you think about set 5 in general, now that we've seen all our ride lines? Do you have a favorite of the new ride lines? Do you have a favorite particular new card? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you still want to support the channel, or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!